What up, you oscillating ostriches? I'm back. Me, singular. Yes, I regret to inform you, this is a solo episode, but don't go anywhere yet. Look at how long it is, alright? And there's barely any dead silence in that thing, okay? So you already know how long it was. It's gotta be over 40 minutes, depending on how long this intro takes me. And this is my first take. Or am I gonna say that every take? Neither of us know. Grant's down for the count, okay? He's sick. Future David to you, we'll probably talk about that. Past David to me. But yeah, so I'm here alone this week, but we cover all the usual goodies, okay? We do Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, Episode 18, Pluto, Episode 2. There's actually a surprising amount of news to talk about. And then Frieren, Episodes 9 through 12. I don't do a whole breakdown of each. That would be absurd. Before I briefly dog on the Kingdoms of Ruin for a little bit, and then we're back with a fantastic Q&A segment at the end of the show, which you can find on our Instagram at Part-Time Otaku Podcast, okay? In the stories every Monday, we host the Q&A if I remember to put it up, or if Vivian does. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but that's fine, okay? We're adults, we can do what we want. Shouts out to the comic book shop at 128 Bank Street in Ottawa at thecomicbookshop.com, or their Instagram at comicbookshopbank, shop spelt SHOPPE, for their continued support of the show. They've been with us like this entire year supporting the show. And you know what? Show them some love, because they're showing us love. We're here because of them. Check out their website. Check out, their in-person physical location on Bank. They've got, surprisingly, comics. They've got manga. They've got figurines. They've got Gundam build kits, magic. They even have magic gatherings over there. You see what I did there? But anyway, check them out. Let them know that we sent you. I think that's about it. Like I said, Grant's not here, but just strap in. Enjoy this. He's still going to have to do this edit. So, Grant, please. Ora. It's me. I'm here, alone. Bit of a different episode this week. Well, I guess past Dave will have filled you in on what the details are. But that's future me to me currently in the present. So hopefully I handled that well. So yeah, Grant's down for the count. He's out. I was out last time. I had real life things. He's sick. One could say he brought this upon himself when he decided to procreate, because children are disease bags that infect everything around them. But I digress. No, I'm kidding. We hope Grant's okay. We wish him well and a speedy recovery. He'll be back next week, I'm sure, to chastise me about all of my takes on this podcast, because he's not here to keep me in check. And now you have to deal with it. So you're welcome. We're going to talk about, well, again, I guess past Dave will have, filled you in what we're going to talk about. So let's just jump into it. Let's get busy with Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, Episode 18. I will warn you, okay? Like I said, I'm here alone. Grant isn't here to balance me out. I've got a hyperactive cat behind me whose automatic food feeder situation is going to go off in like 10 minutes time. I'm going to try and time that with the magic of editing so that it doesn't bother you. But I'm telling you here now because, well, there's a good chance I'm not going to do that properly, and it's going to interrupt us, and you're going to have to deal with it because I have to deal with it. What is this, Sirius XM? Okay, you get what you pay for, which is nothing, by the way. You're welcome. I'm not bitter. Okay, all right. Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, Episode 18. There's your spoiler alert, okay? Chill. Man, Jujutsu Kaisen. Not really slowing down, but, I mean, at least the story isn't. The Shibuya incident, I think, last week they really put the incident in the arc name. But animation-wise, definitely a bit of a chink in the armor. This episode, I think I probably wasn't the only one to notice. It wasn't really looking like its usual self. I mean, there was a lot of, postulating online earlier last week about, are they even going to make it in time to get this episode out? We kind of continue to cover this week to week. The scandal this week, around the time that this episode was coming out, was I think one of their main animators tweeted something that roughly translated to "I want to die quickly," and then it was deleted after 15 minutes. I don't know, man. shockingly, and again, I think this may come as a surprise to you, we're not going to solve the work conditions and working culture of Japan, and specifically just production schedules in the anime industry on this podcast, which is probably coming in at under an hour. I don't think we're going to be able to get to the root of it or propose any meaningful solutions. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. But I think I echo what everyone else is saying. It's shitty. It's a bummer. I think it's, if Grant was here, he'd be half glass full about it, and he would say, I think it's positive that employees are starting to communicate publicly about this kind of thing, because as far as I'm aware, that hasn't been super common. I think like people kind of suck it up and work the unworkable conditions until they burn out, and then like Mappa puts out some subpar product, and then they might like extend things a little bit, then the animation quality recovers, and then we forget about it until they announce that they've taken on 13 more major projects. So I don't know, man. Rough spot. I will say, if we're talking strictly about the anime, like, this was among the weaker episodes of the season. Not that it's like bad, it's still a great episode. But yeah, there are some rough frames in this, and like especially when they're trying to key on really emotional moments, and Yuji looks like he's like a fan drawn animation. That's tough. I think obviously, and I've spoken long enough to give you a spoiler warning. Okay, so this is your last one about the big thing this episode is Nanami, right? He's got this scene on the beach where he's kind of flashing back and forth between, kind of what he's picturing, what we're hoping maybe, death looks like for him on the other side, and kind of this hellish two-faced version of him fighting all these transfigured humans on a subway platform. I think as far as execution goes, it worked for me. I liked the piano. I liked the flashes back and forth. I think my favorite part is like, the most gruesome part, the conversation with Mahito. The whole, you're here, I've been here the whole time, Yuji coming around the corner. That in particular is the rough animation sequence I'm thinking about. And then the whole, Nanami gets this really good final line, and they have this like really beautiful use of silence when he goes. I thought that was like a really, really good decision. We talk about the importance of like how to use silence effectively. There's a scene in 86, I think, of every time I think about that, and then also just the entire series of Sunny Boy, and at parts Neon Genesis. But I think he went well. I think when you care about a character and they have to die, you want their death to have meaning, but you also want it to be like a memorable moment, an episode, and like what does it mean in the larger context of the show? I don't know the answer to that, but as death scenes go, it was good. We have a good Q&A on Nanami's death scene that we're going to save to the end of the show, but I thought it was well handled, and the ensuing fight with Mahito was relatively good. It was entertaining. Like, what we've talked about a lot, I think, week to week when it comes to Jujutsu Kaisen is like how creative their fights are. And, Mahito is a complete vehicle for creativity, right? Just like by nature of his cursed technique, I guess. Everything he does is like transfiguration, right? So like what he can do in a fight is really only limited by the animator's imagination. Actually, speaking of which, I will say one small critique I have of the Nanami Mahito scene is I saw the manga panel for it, and they were actually face to face in the panel instead of Mahito being behind Nanami. And I think, it's a nitpick, but I think face to face would have been better. It's more intimate, it's more personal, and especially this artsy way they went with like the use of silence and that final line, like I leave, you take it from here, or I leave it to you. I don't know. I think face to face might have been better, but I digress. One thing I will say, it's not their best work animation wise, but it is still a good fight. I've mentioned it's creative already. They used to like the claustrophobia, like the way they have Mahito leveraging his technique to literally like smush Itadori into a confined space and like limit the fight to this little narrow slit. Also very creative, very like heavily. I don't even know if you would call it CG'd, but just like heavily textured. It looks a little off. Um, but what I was gonna say is, I do think the audience can become numb to it. I don't know how many episodes in a row we've had just fights, but I do think when you're not doing like crazy genre defining shit, like I saw a YouTube thumbnail earlier today about how Sukuna versus Makara was generational. I don't know about that, but it does seem to have been a really big deal, and it seemed to have generated a huge amount of online chatter. Um, but you know, when you get like a fight that's only okay in a season completely focused on like really big fights, and especially just the last what 5, 6, 7, 8 episodes. This is episode 18 of the season, and they've all been pretty action heavy. And then you get one that's kind of only okay. I don't know. I think it takes a little bit of the sting out of it. Like it hits a little bit less hard. I'm not quite as on the edge of my seat as I have been because I have to be honest. I don't know how this fight goes, but I have a feeling that Yuji doesn't die and neither does Mahito. Now, I could be wrong because I didn't think about all these characters dying in this arc, but Mahito's kind of the only one left, and Yuji's the main character. Now, I don't know, have I been wrong before? Yeah, but like it's hard to feel like there are intense stakes in this particular fight. I would love to be proven wrong. I just find myself a little bit like I was kind of hoping to see what Geto and Mei Mei were up to this episode, or I would like when are we going to get to the forgive me for the term, but like the post-mortem. Like so much has happened, so many curses are dead, so many sorcerers are dead. Like a lot of things are changing right now, and like when do we deal with the fallout of Gojo being subdued the way he has been? So I'm excited to see where all that goes. We haven't seen Toto yet. Grant keeps mentioning that Yuta's going to be in this episode, or in this season rather. Like, when's all that going to happen? Versus like, I don't know, another fight in a subway station that like I don't know will end up mattering. That's my half glass empty take. But yeah, like, does this serve to give Itadori like a power boost? And like, did they nail his frustration? I think yes. I think that worked, but I don't know. I wasn't blown away by this one in particular, and that in no way means that like I think the rest of the season isn't going to be great. I think it's going to be fantastic, but this was like a bit of a dip for me. I think maybe the animation quality played a hand in that. But yeah, you know, onward and upward. We'll see where we go from here. I'm very excited. All right. Anyway, did you catch that cut? Maybe if I didn't bring attention to it, you wouldn't have caught it. Well, we're here now. Let's talk about Pluto, episode 2. I'm not going to go super long on this. This was a really good episode. We meet a few new robots, Adam being, I think, like the really big one, but also Brando and Hercules. Grant would say, like, they're fleshing out the world, and I bet Grant would say it feels very lived in, because it does. I think one thing they're doing really well is they continue to reference their own history in this show. Like, they keep mentioning the 39th Central Asian War, I believe. That's something that it reminds me of Game of Thrones, and like just that property in general, is you don't feel like you've been dropped in and like you're learning everything alongside the main character. You feel like you've been dropped in and you have to catch up, because it's like a real place where there's politics and history and, you know, just all this stuff, right? Like this whole, you know, robots with rights and this and that, and I don't know. It's been around, I guess, is my point. And I think that they're doing a really good job of it. They were pretty heavy on this like crazy tornado CGI fight thing. This time around, like I think they handled it a little bit differently than they handled like the North number 2 fight at the end of the first episode. This time there's like a little split, or a little twist rather, that like kind of all of the robots sort of feel this particular fight when it happens. I don't know. I might have to rewatch it before I watch the third one, to be honest. But I also think one of the themes I'm picking up on, and forgive me if you've watched this show and this shit is just obvious, but I think that they this is not iRobot, right? This is like robots are already so far along, or at least like some of these newer gen ones like Greshit and Adam, that it's becoming difficult to tell them apart from real humans. Like, I mean, I feel like that's part of the pilot is when you meet Detective Greshit, the audience, Greshit, whatever, the audience doesn't know that he's a robot until he reveals it, right? Like, there are obviously little cues we pick up on later. He's not actually drinking. You know what I mean? They kind of observe social convention for the sake of doing it in order to, I don't know, appear more human. But I think the question is like, why are they doing that? Are they doing it because it makes humanity more comfortable? Or like in Adam's case, does he actually want to eat? Because he does. You know what I mean? Like there's that whole conversation with those two in the cafe that I think was very interesting. And then obviously later, like he cries about it. And it's, I don't know. I feel, you know, it's, I don't think I'm taking a major leap here. I don't know anything about Astro Boy. Grant surprised me with that whole talk about it last week. Like I didn't know any of this was connected to that. But it feels like I'm assuming we're going down this path of, you know, the robots and AI kind of bleeding into actual intelligence, or AGI as we call it nowadays. But I don't know. I continue to believe that this thing looks like a movie. I think it was Studio what, like M2 or something like that. I don't know. But you know the episodes are an hour long. Yeah, it is Studio M2. Fucking nailed it. 8 episodes. It's number 74 on my anime list, and I like this thing was so big, it got into Sam's newsfeed. You know, not from my like anime algorithm, you know what I mean? Like it was, I think in the top 10 on Netflix when it came out. I don't know. You know, it's coming off the conversation about Mappa and Jujutsu Kaisen and just working conditions. I don't know. It feels like whoever made this took their time. That's not to say that Netflix properties, animated properties, are all developed with like a perfect production schedule. From what I understand, it seems to be a pretty industry-wide problem, but all of that said, this thing looks like it was made with a lot of love and a lot of time put into it. I'm curious if they maintain this level of quality throughout. Like, I remember that was one of the big things about Arcane was like, holy shit, like, how did they do this? But then you know, you see the release schedule for season 2 and you're like, that's how they do it. They take fucking years to make it. Curious how long this thing was made and, you know, what the production process was like. But yeah, I don't know. I'm really digging it. I can easily stick to our commitment of 1 episode of this per week. I think it may, you know, I'm looking at the calendar. I think we'll wrap it up. Actually, I might have to speed it up if I wanted to wrap it up by end of year. But, you know, I'm sure we'll do like our favorite anime of 2023. We'll do one of those podcasts in early 24. If it continues like this level of quality, I have a feeling that that may end up on that episode. But we'll see. See, a little bit of promo for you. Things to look forward to. Okay, let's talk about some news, shall we? First and least important, there's a Sinister Six movie in development in the works at Sony. Because I think their strategy has been, let's make movies that are for no one. And it seems to be going great. Tom Hardy's loving it. No, but I mean, seriously, I don't know what they're thinking over there. I mean, I think that the game right now is probably just like, if you have a superhero piece of IP, why not? I guess. I don't know, man. Like, who's asking for this? And more importantly, who's asking for a Sinister Six movie that is connected to no current Spider-Man? Or do they, like, drag Tom Holland kicking and screaming, even though the guy has said repeatedly he doesn't want to be Spider-Man anymore? Or do they, like, say fuck it and they make a Miles Morales story around Sinister Six? Like, that would be a breath of fresh air. But the problem is, even a breath of fresh air at this stage is, like, even if it's really good, which, let's be honest, like, the chances of that are tough, who's asking for it? You know, like, what I said to Grant last week is, like, I keep hearing about Loki Season 2. Everybody's talking about how great it is. And then I ask people, have you seen it? And they're like, fucking no. I'm exhausted. I don't want to watch more MCU content or more superhero stuff. And so it's like, even if you get 1 out of 5 that are really good, or that is really good, like, who's going to watch it? Because they watch the other 4 first, and, like, they're done. They're tired. So I don't know. Maybe this is a topical time to bring up this current quote that's going around right now about Bob Iger from a Deadline interview or a story that they did that he says Disney's current focus is quality over quantity. I don't know, Bob. This is one of those things. I have an anecdote about this. It's like you would think that that would be your focus all the time. No? Or did you like a few years ago before he left, did he go, "Hey guys, I'm retiring, but my marching orders are let's focus on quantity over quality, and then I'll return later to save the day." Like, I don't think that's how it worked. My anecdote on this, it reminds me of something. My friend got pulled over once, and I think he was like speeding or something. Like he was probably pulled over for like a genuine reason, right? And the cop that pulled him over was like, "Hey, like I know you're only going like a couple over, but like we're really on it this week, or this whole month is seatbelt awareness month and speeding awareness month, and we want to be really stringent on letting people know this, like you can't mess around." And my friend, being who he is, he goes, "As opposed to every other month?" It's like, so you're not usually focused on that, or you're just like extra focused on that? Like, where's the line in the sand where you're like, well, it's January and you're only going 10 over, so I'm gonna let it go by. But if it was February, you know what I mean? It's just weird. It feels kind of ass backwards, and that's how Bob Iger's quote feels. It's like, yeah, no shit, quality over quantity. Like, I don't know. This is a recent problem that they've had, and also, like, lest we forget, like, remember how long it takes to produce one of these shows, and that Bob Iger himself kind of greenlit most of these fucking things, okay? So, I don't know. He's in a bed of his own making. I don't think there are any tears for the current state of the MCU, unless you visit their subreddit, in which case, well, you may as well use it as lube. Okay, moving on. The War of the Rohirrim is connected to the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings, not to the Amazon Prime's Rings of Power. So I then had to Google The War of the Rohirrim because I didn't know what it was. Is it a series? Is it not? And then I found out it's an animated fantasy film. And then I said, oh, no one will care about this. And then I was going to remove it from the newsfeed, but instead I told it to you. So you're welcome. A recent special has hit YouTube that I highly recommend everybody check out. It's by Louis Katz, Katz, called The Best Comic You've Never Heard of. I wanted to give Grant this recommendation because, you know, like the world of stand-up comedy is so insane right now. And, you know, there's just so many different places you can find your comics, and a lot of them seem to be going direct to consumer on YouTube. And I saw this whole special on this Joke World channel, which I recommend you follow on YouTube if you're a fan of stand-up comedy. And they get all these big named comics, you know, Mark Maron, David Tell, to kind of intro Louis Katz as this comic that everybody loves but nobody knows, because I guess he's just really bad at promoting himself. And having a podcast that is not super great at promoting itself, I totally understand where they're coming from. Like, it is kind of the least fun part of the gig, to be honest. And I think that Louis Katz talks about that in his special, and it resonated with me a little bit. And most importantly, it's a really good special. It's one of the best written pieces of stand-up comedy I've seen in a little while. So if you're into that, take a peek. Marvel's Avengers The Kang Dynasty has a new writer, Michael Waldron. I don't know if he's a new one, but he's a writer known for, I think he did Loki, Rick and Morty, Doctor Strange. He's done some Rick and Morty, easy. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So yeah, I don't know. He's been tapped to write that. I think he'd already been set to write some other Marvel properties. Grant may have actually mentioned this last week, but I don't know. It's official now, so we'll see what they do. I wonder if his first order of business will be changing the title of the movie, because, yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard of that. I haven't heard anything, since that big Variety piece that came out about the crisis at Marvel, and they're considering everything between bringing RDJ back, which, my God, to recasting Jonathan Majors. I don't know how all that's going to end up. And I got to be honest, I'm losing interest day by day, but here we are. Christopher Nolan says he will not be directing the next James Bond. I don't know. I actually kind of wanted that to happen. Like, I know everybody plays, like, celebrity film matchmaker. Like, oh my God, if only Tarantino did a Star Trek movie. Be honest, that would be dope. Just like it would be dope to get Nolan to do a James Bond movie. But at the same time, it's like I think, again, I'm stating the obvious here, but I think the stars really have to align for this kind of shit to work, right? Nolan seems to be a pretty specific guy, and a lot of those specificities don't seem, in my mind, to line up with the Bond franchise. Like, he hates CGI. He'd probably want to cast his own Bond, though this would be the moment to do it. He'd want to do everything probably in IMAX. He's probably really picky. I think if you're like the people in charge, I forget the family's name, but if you're part of the family in charge of the Bond franchise, like, you can just get any up and coming director. When I say up and coming, I mean like someone who has had like a Hollywood blockbuster, but maybe has not necessarily taken on a big piece of franchise IP, and like get them to play within the confines of what you want, and they'll kind of be happy, right? Like, there's this quote that came out this week from Taika Waititi being like, I didn't really want to do Thor, but I had children to feed. Now, granted, like, Thor Ragnarok ended up being fucking great, but like, do you think he was walking around with the, in between writing the Jojo Rabbit's adapted screenplay being like, oh, but if only I could do Thor? Like, fucking no. Guy had to pay his bills, ended up crushing it. So I don't know. I think Bond will be fine. It is a shame, though, because a Nolan Bond movie would have been dope. It would have been interesting to see if he cast somebody, but who knows? Maybe we'll see, maybe not. And lastly, and probably leastly, there's a live-action Naruto movie in the works, because if there's one lesson we haven't learned yet in anime, it's that we need more of these live-action adaptations. Don't come at me with your One Piece shit, okay? Because 1 out of 1,000 of these worked doesn't mean everybody gets to do it. But I mean, yeah, again, Grant's not here to balance me out. For all I know, it'll be great, okay? Okay, Frieren. Dude, we're like 37 episodes behind on Frieren. I think just because of the schedule we've had. I was traveling, he's sick, AOT special. I'm not going to cover Frieren in crazy detail in this moment. What I will say is the arc from episode, I think, 7 or 8, all through 10 or 11. Basically the Aura the Guillotine arc, and like the whole Lugner and Linny versus Stark and Fern, that whole conflict, that was some real shit. This show is astounding. I think I just published a TikTok. That's right, we're on TikTok. Follow us, Part-Time Otaku Podcast. Saying like, yeah, this might be the best thing on TV right now, or best anime currently airing right now. And I say that watching and sincerely enjoying Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. And like, they couldn't be more different, but I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the world building. I love the fantasy. I think more than anything, I love Frieren. I think, I hate that I didn't make this association. It was actually Leanna. Go figure. It upsets me. But we're at my birthday party. I turned 22. And Sam had thrown me this dope birthday party, by the way. That was Mad Men themed, because we're currently finishing that for her first time. So she had campaign posters up. There was, the drinks from the show that they all have. Little callbacks, like those candy Popeye cigarettes, because smoking was cool back then. Yeah, I don't know. Killer birthday party, shout out. But I asked Leanna how she was digging Frieren, and she said it's melancholy, and that resonates, I think, with a lot of people. And melancholy is just the perfect word, I think, for this show. There's something bittersweet and kind of sad about it, and it's built into the beginning. But the more you get to know Frieren, the more you kind of feel bad. And I don't even know if she feels bad. I don't know if she's depressed, but I don't know if she's super happy either. And I think the editing of the show is what really sends that home, right? Anytime she thinks about a certain thing, how she should handle a situation, she thinks back to her time with Himmel and that whole crew of heroes, which, as she has stated, in the grand scheme of things, is a pretty small piece of her life. But it seems to have been a really critical one, which, ergo, the whole quest that they're on. So, I don't know. I I think it's nostalgic. You know, there's like this longing that she has to be, I don't know, but reunited with Himmel, or so much as it is like to do it over again. I don't know, but it's bittersweet. It's beautiful. This show is like, I think this is one of those shows. It's like, this is what you show someone for the first time in anime. Like, you don't show them Attack on Titan, as I have done countless times and have ruined people's enjoyment of the medium. But like, this is offering something so specific, and it has none of the shitty anime tropes that I complain about all the time. You know what I mean? It doesn't have any of these shitty fan service moments, or the comedy that sometimes only hits if you're used to watching anime. So I don't know. I keep saying I don't know, and then I talk about all these things I feel. So maybe I'll stop that. But I think you get what I'm saying. Frieren is unreal. I absolutely love it. I loved episode 12. It was everything I love about this show put into one episode. It literally has everything. It's got, the reflection on, Frieren's kind of past relationships with Himmel and co. There's this little subplot about Himmel not being able to pull the sword out of the stone, and then like these like surreptitious cuts to Stark. So you got to wonder, where does that go, if anywhere? Are they just teasing us? There's a whole monster battle. We see some character development, Stark jumping in a little bit more readily now, Fern back up, Frieren working, like the three of them working as a bit more of a cohesive team, which makes sense considering what they just went through in this whole Aura the Guillotine arc together. You can see them growing, and you can see Frieren growing, thinking about Stark's birthday, and yeah, I don't know. And then she cooks him a dinner, and like it's so weirdly specific, but like it's dope. It had violence, it had feelings, it had music, it had gags. Yeah, this show is fantastic. And like we haven't mentioned the animation. The animation is strong as hell. The fight scenes are fantastic. They don't seem to have, I think they're playing the whole way through for 24, 28 episodes or something, 2 consecutive cours. I haven't heard a peep about the production schedule being hellish. That doesn't mean that it wasn't. Let's also be real. But man, like every time I look at the discussions on Reddit about this kind of thing, I just see how happy the manga readers are. They're like, holy shit, like we're getting the adaptation that everybody hopes for. And even then, like I'm seeing people saying, wow, like the anime changed this, and like it allowed them to shine a brighter light on this particular thing. And I like that change. Like people are happy about the changes being made to the anime. So I don't know, man. Fuck, I said it again. But it's really, really, really good. If you haven't seen Frieren Beyond Journey's End, I cannot recommend it enough. I will not miss a week of this show. Non-negotiable. Okay? That's about that. I was gonna briefly talk about Kingdoms of Ruin, because it's what I watch when I hate myself and I have nothing else to watch. Because I am both engaged in Kingdoms of Ruin, and I openly laugh at it. Like I don't know what they're trying to do. I don't know how serious this show is trying to take itself, but it is absolutely like made for edgelords. And like it's absolutely absurd. But it's almost funny. Like I don't want to say it's funny bad, but it might be funny bad. You know what I mean? Like, but it has all these pieces of a show that might make it good, or if they were assembled slightly differently, it might be a better show. Like it has good world building, it has interesting characters, there's cool like power systems and mechanics and magic and interplanetary travel. Imagine, like there's all this weird shit. But then like just some of the dialogue, man, and like some of the ways the characters behave, it's like, all right, now I'm turning this off. But then like I'll come back every other week. So I'm not watching it, I'm not 100% caught up, but every now and then, nothing else on, I'll turn it on. And I'm curious if other people are watching this, and if so, are you just like, it'd be funny if like people are just like really into it and I'm just here dogging it, but something tells me that's not the case, because I haven't heard anybody else talk about it. But yeah, Kingdoms of Ruin. Those are my brief thoughts on that. Okay, the Q&A. I foreshadowed this earlier. This is from Abenak, the GOAT. Haven't done a Q&A in a little while. So it's only fitting that she gets another question in here, and it's a topical one about Jujutsu Kaisen. So, like I said, it's relevant to this week. So here's the question. Oh, and by the way, if you're curious about how to submit the Q&A, you can do it on our Instagram at Part-Time Otaku Podcast. We put it in the stories every Monday, probably. Okay, here's the question. With Nanami's death, was it needed to give Yuji another push to the edge, letting Nanami give his last words to him? I felt as though with Sukuna taking over and how episode 17 ended, Yuji was already ready to fight. And if Mahito versus Nobara works out in Mahito's favor, that's extra ammunition. Did you like it / appreciate how it was handled or the fake out for what it was? I think it's a good question. I think it's difficult. I think the short answer, and I will, elaborate because that's central to my existence, but I think it was well done. I think that Yuji seeing Nanami die and seeing him be killed by a guy he already wants to kill, because don't forget that the Junpei murder in season 1, that's the second time Mahito has taken someone away from Yuji in front of him. And I think, Yuji's connection with Nanami was much stronger than what he had with Junpei, right? Nanami was a total mentor. We don't know a lot about Yuji's family history, but I think it's probably clear to say he's a little bit in need of some role models. And I think Nanami was one of those. And, he's kind of lost Gojo and Nanami now, and things feel pretty destitute. It's not looking good. I think, your point is a good one, which is, did he really need the push? I don't know. I think he might have. I think there's a difference between... hear me out in sentences. This sentence was not on my bingo card, but there's a difference between your alter ego causing mass murder and destruction using you as a vessel, and then watching powerlessly as one of the few mentors you have left is killed helplessly in front of you. I think they're both very bad, and to your point, they both are probably plenty of ammunition to try and set things right. But and then there's Mahito's kind of whole subplot, and this has been explored a lot in the anime, that you can get to Yuji, right? You can't get to Gojo the same way you can get to Yuji by causing death of the innocent around him. And this clearly has an effect on him. But also in that fight, one of the first things Yuji says to himself is Nanami wouldn't let his anger throw his logic out the window, right? And then you kind of see a more composed Yuji throughout the rest of that fight. And I think, he does a better job than he kind of has historically, which is interesting. I think if I have a problem with it, it's what I said earlier. I have a problem with the stakes, because I'm not super convinced that either of them actually lose. I think too many people have died, both on the curse side and the sorcerer side. And that's not a complaint, but I think you can't then kill either of these two, because Mahito's the only baddie really left out of that bunch, and Yuji is the fucking main character. Yeah, fine, you can subvert my expectations, but it's where does that leave the show if you do that? You know what I mean? So I'm confused as to where we go from here. I also think that they've handled Yuji in a very peculiar way this season, right? They give him 1v1, he loses, he's healed by Sukuna, who wipes Shibuya off the map. Then he comes back for another fight that he should on paper lose, but then is competitive in it. I don't know. I don't know where Yuji's character is going. And as far as the Nobara stuff, she's barely been in the season. She's been in a couple scenes. So killing her, I mean, maybe it makes sense because they barely used her. And it's okay, let's squeeze the last of the blood out of that stone, since they haven't really leveraged her character so far. But I also doubt that happening too. But then, if you told me that Nanami and Maki were going to get iced in quick succession, I probably would have doubted that too. But I also... seeing Nanami kind of come back only to die again, which I think, for the record, did take some of the heat, pun intended, out of his death. makes me now second guess whether Maki's actually down for the count too. So maybe that leaves more room for another character death. I don't know. I think, I talked earlier at the beginning of the podcast about liking Mahito's, like, the result of his curse technique is, like, it leaves a lot of room for, like, creative fights in animation and innovation. I keep saying like a lot, too. I think without Grant here, I'm noticing all these little things. But anyway, I don't love that he was able to split in two. I guess that's what I'm getting at. It's convenient, whatever. Storytelling does that sometimes. But it's a little too convenient and kind of irritating. Though, I'm thinking now, was there precedent for that? I don't know. If you know there was, if they've done that before in the anime, fine, I'll let it go. Let me know if they did. But yeah, the death worked for me. I think it was the right ammunition for Yuji in that moment. But was it potentially overkill? Yeah, sure. I think, I couldn't fault you if you had that take. As far as, like, the fake out for Nanami's death, yeah, I think I alluded to that earlier. I don't love that they, like, killed him to kill him again. But if I had to choose between the two, I like this one better. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question. Great question. I bet that would have resulted in a long conversation had Grant been here. But he'll be here next week, okay? And we'll talk about Jujutsu Kaisen and Pluto and Frieren and whatever else is on and in the news then. So thanks for listening to this special solo episode. I always wonder, I always think to myself, can I really talk in a room alone for 40 minutes? And here we are, so I don't know what that says. Definitely not Bill Burr, but maybe if I ever end up in a padded cell, I won't feel so alone about it. All right, ending on some darkness. Sorry about that. Okay, we'll be back next week. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, at Part-Time Otaku Podcast. Shout out to the comic book shop on Bank Street for their continued support of the show. Grant isn't here to say the thing, so for now, I will say bye, guys. Cheers.